All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, wake up the echoes as Notre Dame enters this upcoming college football season seeking their fifth consecutive 10-win season. And all of this has come down under the watch of head football coach Brian Kelly as he is on the cusp of some history this year in South Bend. Now, currently, Kelly is just 3 wins behind the great Nuke Rockne for the all-time wins at Notre Dame in regards to being their head football coach. And you look at this Irish team, Brian Kelly has gotten them back to what they were a quarter of a century ago, if not a little bit longer, where we were accustomed to seeing Notre Dame consistently being in the top 10. We were accustomed to seeing the Fighting Irish going out there and contending for the national championship every single year. And, this is basically what we're having right now. We saw Notre Dame in the college football playoff last year. Of course, they came up short in technically the Rose Bowl, of course, was played in the Cotton Bowl, or pardon me, Jerry World nonetheless, but it still was the Rose Bowl. Notre Dame came up short versus Alabama in the semifinal, but the Irish, they're looking to build off of that. And I know that they have a lot of talent to replace from that team. But nonetheless, it's a situation where, the best programs in college football, they don't rebuild, they simply reload. And that is what Notre Dame is looking to do heading into this season. Now, Notre Dame is back to being an independent this season. And I say that because, of course, they still have their affiliation with the Atlantic Coast Conference, where they play at least 5 games every year out of their 12-game regular season slate versus ACC teams. Of course, last year, things were thrown all up in the air due to the pandemic. And with that said, excuse me, Notre Dame played an ACC schedule throughout. That's not going to be the case this year. I've talked about it before. Notre Dame, they simply want to have their cake and eat it too. They get some of that ACC money, and then they get that NBC money for being that independent that is, getting their games televised on one of the premier networks in this country. But getting down to brass tacks, Brian Kelly is going to be looking at former Wisconsin quarterback Jack Cohn to come in and replace Ian Book. Of course, Ian Book had a stellar career as a starting quarterback for the Irish. He's now trying to pursue a pro career, and now Jack Cohn steps in and he tries to go out there and get it done. But the one thing for Jack Cohn, and when you think about all of those Wisconsin quarterbacks, they were always good game managers. And I say that from the standpoint for Cohn is that he doesn't have to go out there and try to do this by himself, because you look at this Notre Dame team and there is a litany of talent around him on offense to go out there and get it done. You look at junior running back Kyron Williams along with sophomore tailback Chris Tyree, and both of these guys are, good running backs, solid running backs. They can go out there and produce and get the job done. And with that said, when you have a new quarterback coming to a new system, it's all about making him comfortable. How do you take a lot of pressure off of that quarterback? You go out there and run the football. Notre Dame has a very seasoned offensive line that's going to go out there and block for their backs as well as for Cone. And you look at sophomore tight end Michael Mayer, and I bring him up because under Kelly, we have seen Notre Dame consistently have quality tight ends. You think about the likes of Tyler Eifert and Kyle Rudolph, who are now in the National Football League. And of course, Michael Mayer could potentially add his name to that mix. You look defensively at the likes of, hybrid Isaiah Foskey, who, can be an outside linebacker, but he is also one of the premier pass rushers in the nation. And I think he's going to go out there and have a big season for this Fighting Irish defense. You look at Notre Dame's schedule, it's not an overwhelmingly hard one, but it is very far from being an easy one. Notre Dame opens up their regular season in Tallahassee against Florida State. Florida State is looking to make some strides from last year's disappointing campaign, but I think the Irish want to go out there and set the tone as well. I'm circling September 25th as Notre Dame will travel to Soldier Field in Chicago to take on Wisconsin. Wisconsin is one of the premier programs in the Big Ten. And on top of that, I guarantee you Jack Cohn wants to try to show Wisconsin what they're missing. And of course, Wisconsin wants to show Jack Cohn that, you know what, they can do pretty good without him. October 2nd, Notre Dame will host Cincinnati. And this is coming right on the heels of the Wisconsin game. Cincinnati is favored by a lot of people to win the American Athletic Conference this year. They could get that group of five bid. This was a team, that faced Georgia in a bowl game last year. Of course, they lost, but Cincinnati is a very formidable team under head football coach Luke Fickell, and they have a very senior laden team that could give the Irish some problems in the contest. When Notre Dame comes off of their bye later that month, they do host USC. And, USC is going to be a solid team once again coming out of the Pac 12 this year. But, Notre Dame heads into that game fresh off of their bye. And historically, when you think about Notre Dame coming into games off of their bye week, they do pretty good. But following that USC game, Notre Dame will host North Carolina. And this is a team under head football coach Mac Brown that could be in the mix to win the ACC this year. Of course, Sam Howell is one of the better quarterbacks in the conference, if not the nation. And that is something that is really going to elevate the importance of that game for the Irish. Of course, Notre Dame takes on Navy on November 6th, and you know about the long storied rivalry between the Irish and the midshipmen. And then finally, Notre Dame finishes up on the road in Palo Alto versus Stanford on the 27th of November. So with that said, that Stanford game is always hit or miss. Even if the Irish are favored, you go out to the West Coast to finish your regular season campaign. And you know what? Even if Stanford is not a good team this year, Notre Dame can definitely not take them lightly in their final game of the regular season. So the big question is, will the Irish be able to make a New Year's Six bowl game this year, and will they be able to make the college football playoff? I think Notre Dame has the potential to go 10-2. Obviously, 10-2 is not going to get it done more than likely for the college football playoff, especially if you're an independent like Notre Dame with no conference championship game. Especially thinking about the powerhouses coming out of the SEC, such as Alabama. You think about the Big Ten being in that mix, and the Big 12, as well as the Pac 12 and the ACC. So, it's going to make it a little bit tougher for Notre Dame to get one of those bids. We definitely saw the Irish get there last year. And honestly, I thought it was a reach for Notre Dame to get there to the college football playoff, being that they got blown out by Clemson in the ACC championship game, but nonetheless, they still got the opportunity to go there and play. But I think Notre Dame will definitely be in the mix for a New Year's Six game, because when you think about it, Notre Dame going 10-2 and them being one of the premier college football brands in the nation. You definitely want to have them at one of your bigger bowl games. So I look at it like this. They might fall short of making that college football playoff, but I definitely think that the Irish will once again be in the mix for a New Year's Six bowl game, going 10-2 and possibly even doing bigger and better things. But I tell you what, nonetheless, Notre Dame does have some key people to replace from last year's team, but I don't think that the Irish will skip that much of a beat. I do think that they will remain among the nation's elite, and that they will stay within the top 15 of the college football rankings for most of the season. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I'm going to take the time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out, drop a line, and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.